So hi, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's a real honor and pleasure to have you talk with us. Would you like to introduce yourself today?
Hi, Anthony. It is my pleasure. I am the Reverend Pat Kaufman, serving as pastor at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Teaneck, New Jersey. I've been here about a year and a half. St. Paul has the reputation of being a welcoming and inclusive church, which means all people are welcome to participate in however they're comfortable in the ministry and life of this community.
Awesome. And so could you tell me how does the LGBT community relate to you?
I, as a young person, my mother's understanding of radical welcome, who was a friend of artists and musicians, was something I grew up with. But I never thought of it personally until I went to seminary and I realized that there were members of my seminary class who were going to have to lie about who they were in order to be ordained. And I was horrified. I remain horrified by that. And always pledged to my friends, to my colleagues, that as an ally, I would always be one to speak to those issues, to speak to the understanding that whom God calls, and God calls people through baptism, as we understand it in the Christian faith, that we have no right to say that some are more worthy than others, that we understand that God gives gifts in baptism, and for some to preach, for some to exhort, for some to teach, and human institutions or human policies have no place in that. About 15 years ago, I guess it is now, it's probably longer than that. My middle daughter came out as lesbian, and she called to tell me, and I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Is that it?"
You're ripping
And
off.
right. And I told her, I reminded her that when she would ask about what kind of person, her question would be as a teenager, all of their questions, I have three daughters, their question would be, because they think they could shock their old mother, "Oh, when could we have sex? When are we old enough to have sex?" And my answer always was, when you're 35, marrying a banker, and I'd always say, don't care, male or female, and living in Connecticut. And when she married her girlfriend, when they married, I used it in their wedding. And I said, well, you got two out of the three because they live in Stamford and she was over 35. but uh, but I have been joyfully performing wedding ceremonies before it was legal. But I say, let the state say what is legal, but the church says what's holy. And what the church says is that it is holy when two souls find each other. And I am honored to bless those relationships and to pronounce people as married.
Wow. That really just makes me my heart swell to hear someone talk like that. That's just beautiful. And
Thank
I'm not a religious person. I Unitarian,
you.
and I know radical welcoming. I know all those terms and stuff.
Mhm, mhm.
But I'm an atheist at heart.
Yeah, that's
But
okay.
it's not against God. It's just personal
Right.
belief, right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it makes my heart swell to hear that, and it makes me, I it's beautiful. It makes sense to me what you're doing, and thank you for doing that. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you.
so before I get into the thick things, you wear a lot of hats, right?
Yes.
And you're with you're a name and a force in the community, and have been for a long time, doing a lot of good work.
Thank you.
So how do you, as a woman of color, a woman of religion, how do you how do you navigate that and be a part of the LGBT community?
I understand how African Americans have traditionally been very conservative, a very different understanding and reading of scripture than I had as a with a liberal education and in the Lutheran church. So I was always welcomed. And because I always felt a welcome, I always felt that I needed to extend it as well. I lived in Orange County, New York for a huge part of my life from um, 1973, I believe it was. Went there, a very white community, but me and my family were always welcomed. That welcome that I received in church was so very important, irrespective of the color I was. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen at times. When like coming to church once with my hair wrapped in an African scarf, and people being shocked. Before I was ordained, I served as a church musician and a music director, and people being shocked. You know, yeah, I'm a person of color. I'm sorry. You didn't notice. And every once in a while, I would do something like that, as you know, appropriating my culture. Um, but I remember as a child, my first introduction to the Lutheran Church as a 14-year-old. My parents had basically given up on church. My father, especially, you know, saw it as the opiate of the masses, and he wanted no part of church. And a young friend whom I just adored, she was so popular, asked me one day why did I go to church, which church I went to. And I said, before I was thinking, oh, I don't go to church. "Oh, you don't go to church?" You know, she was horrified. And I'm looking around at all of these people, and I realized that maybe I could come to yours and see what that's like. And I went there, and from the first Sunday I was there, I was welcome. A Lutheran church. No one asked me where my parents were. No one asked me why I was there. It was a split church. It was evolving. It was half Norwegian and Scandinavian and half West Indian. And I was neither one, but I was always welcomed there. And so I took those experiences from my childhood into my understanding of, and when I was discerning a call, that this was an important issue to speak to. Serving at St. Paul is my first opportunity to serve a congregation that is, I would say, 40, maybe 45, 55 split between 45% African American, 55% white European background. And the freedom that has come and the encouragement that has come to speak to issues of race, of class, of disparity is something that I have never experienced in my ministry. And I've been ordained 20 years. So having this pulpit, you know, I don't beat people over the head, but, but it is very important. You know, we spent time talking about and continue to the systemic racism that would allow a police officer to react so very violently in the case of George Floyd, you know, being horrified and saying, didn't we do these? Didn't we settle these things in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s? And of course we didn't. And now we have to look at society. We have to look at it as a whole. And I feel none of us can be silent about this. Uh, all of us have to speak, and especially people of color, females, ones who have not been largely part of the conversation, and our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, our siblings. We have to speak to it because it not only affects us, it affects everyone. And our entire society is diminished if any of us are in despair, not being treated fairly, not being treated equally. And from the banking rules to education rules to access to healthcare, all of these things have to be addressed now. And people will say, oh, it's so much and it's so a lot, and oh, we're never going to, but we have to start. We have to start because people are dying, and we can't leave it. And I speak of a grandson who no one can look at him and tell what his race is. He's only one quarter black, but his skin is brown. And he runs. He's a 14-year-old skinny, 5'9", 95-pound kid, runs with a hoodie in an almost all white neighborhood in Cortlandt Manor, New York. I fear for him. I fear for him, as do his parents. And that shouldn't be in 21st century America. That shouldn't be.
That's absolutely right. And then this is part of what I'm trying to raise is the complexity and the various components of the LGBT population. And people I'm trying to highlight that this is a much needed piece because everything's intersectional, right? And if you
Yes.
don't have that piece of the puzzle, it's
Yeah.
not going to click and it's not going to work. Right.
Exactly.
And so often when I'm talking, it's like, I think the perception is when I'm talking about LGBT, it's like, oh, this is a whole other new thing over there. I was like, no, you're
No.
dealing with LGBT, you're
Yeah.
dealing with racism. That's
Exactly.
all in mingled in what I'm talking about,
Exactly.
because who are the people that are suffering the most is, Black and brown people of the LGBT population, right?
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
so, it's like it's in our best interest to align and
Yeah.
to how can we work together because we're all interlocked. We need to work.
Exactly. And we need to be. We need
We
to
need to.
be. One part of our community suffers, we all suffer. And
Exactly.
they thought, I know there are children out there who have been still being put out of their homes because of how they understand themselves and with no place to go. And one of the ministries I'm hoping to start or have here, again, non-denominational, just you're welcome here. You don't need to
Yes.
get to talk about Jesus, but to know that there's a safe place
Yeah.
for our youth. And I know they are disproportionately represented among homeless youth. It is a crime, and Um, um, it's happening before our eyes, and
Yeah.
we have to speak to it, and we have to do something about it.
Yeah. And I've been talking about this with a lot of people, and I'm trying to say, you know, we all have to work together and we all have to be cohesive because that's how you raise the community. You know,
Yes,
you don't know where the next Albert Einstein's going to pop up.
exactly,
Right? We don't
exactly,
got that kind of thing. It just happens.
exactly, exactly,
And, you know, I'm coming from a point of a lot of it, like looking at the economics of it. It's like by looking the other way and allowing people to languish and not have resources and not have access to these things,
exactly,
that's actually costing us because
exactly,
you know how it's going to that community is going to and further down the rabbit hole and then need, right?
exactly, exactly.
So what I'm looking to do is like how can we work together? Like in your words, how do you manage that? How do you, because that's must be a constant battle on all sides
Yeah.
because LGBT people, there's a lot of racism, there's a
Yes.
lot of internalized homophobia, there's a
Yes.
lot of all that going on,
Yes.
and that I'm just in awe of you
Oh,
and what
no,
you
no.
do. No, really, this is genuine. It's like, how do you do this?
It's well, I believe in education. I believe in speaking to the issues. Um, I never take a hard pass anymore. I used to say, oh, I'm gonna talk to this one. I first of all, I feel all people are worthy to have the discussion with, if they want to genuinely have a discussion. Um, and I lift up the issues. We cannot let them die. So I speak to economic disparity. I will preach on it. I will speak about it in a sermon. And I one of my favorite themes and where we are in the church calendar is the lie of capitalism that tells us that there isn't enough for everyone, because that's where racism comes from, where we taught there has to be someone on the bottom because there isn't enough for everyone. So someone has to be deemed inferior. Someone has to be deemed not worthy. But that's a lie, because there is enough for everyone. And the church needs to speak against that lie. And somewhere, especially in the mainline denominations, we've stopped speaking that way. We've stopped with the speech and the talk of the 60s, for example. So so it has to be spoken to, and I'm blessed to be in a congregation that takes to the streets.
Yeah,
We march, we
yeah,
talk, we discuss these issues, and we don't say a sweet Jesus prayer and hope somebody else is going to do something about it. We know that this is our work, and I remind them it's also holy work. So we do this along with feeding people. We got involved with the feeding program, and one of my um, one of the first things I asked about it, does it serve everyone? because if it doesn't, then we need to not be a part of it. We need to start our own, because we need a program where no one is turned away because of immigration status, because of sexual orientation, because of economic ability. If we're going to feed people, we need to feed people. And I was assured that that it accepts everyone. And then I felt that we could be a part of it. Yeah, it's hard work. As I say to my husband, we are an interracial couple. I tell him he can put it down. He doesn't. He can put it down. I can't put it down. I can't, because as soon as someone looks at me, I've already been judged. I've
Yeah.
already been told, and I've already been judged, and people have already made a decision about who I am. And and sometimes, I'll let it go. Oh, you speak so well. You must be a teacher. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go with that. but, but sometimes now it will be, oh, why do you say that? You know? So there are many opportunities, and I tend to come at people with love instead of anger.
Yeah.
I tend to not be angry unless it's the end of the day. My feet hurt, but it's like, okay, I can't deal with you. But but most of the time, and most of the time, I find people receptive. Most of the time, I do.
And I just want to highlight, because people gloss over things like what you just said, and how you're being judged, and people just don't get
No.
that. You know, walking into a room,
Mhm.
and you may come in with like, oh, I'm going to meet new friends. I'm going to have a great experience. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then people just see
Yes, sir.
this image that they project onto you.
Exactly.
You may not know that
Mhm.
right up at front. It takes a long time sometimes for you to get it. And then afterwards, you're like, I'm such a fool. I put
Yes.
all this energy
Mhm.
towards being with these people at work or school or wherever it may be,
Mhm.
and they've never even seen me. They just saw
Exactly.
this.
Exactly.
So I know that feeling, and I never want people to gloss over that.
No,
No.
you can't. And as I've said to my husband, not, I am a female. I am Black. I enter every room looking and scanning, for my safety, because I have to know who's there.
Yeah.
I have to be able to see. And of course, we look at the world very differently. We were traveling this past summer. We stopped at a rest stop, and a young Black kid had obviously bumped the car of somebody who was parked, and people started getting out of their cars. And my husband is saying, "Oh, let's just keep going. Let's get out of here." No, it's a young Black man. And he said, "Oh my goodness, I never even noticed." He doesn't have to. He doesn't, his life doesn't depend on it. And
Yeah.
Black and brown people's lives depend on it.
Yeah.
And Black and brown transgender people, our lives, our lives depend on it. We have to know who's there. We have to know. And
And and representation is so important to me, because I'm noticing in today's climate a lot of people that were brown, that my people,
mhm,
that so you look at the census, and
mhm,
the days it used to be, white, Black, Hispanic,
right,
Asian, other, right?
right.
And for me, on my island, I come from Puerto Rico. You go to Old San Juan, you see a
Mhm,
statue of a Spaniard, and
mhm,
An African, and a native
mhm,
Taino. And
mhm,
we grew up and we were taught we're all of those things.
mhm,
And now you look at the census and it says, you know, Hispanic, Black, white, or the other. I was like, how can they turn?
right,
I'm all of those things. I
right,
can't decide which one it is because
right.
they're all in me.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
to me is a great shame, because now you see people that are well, I'm not going to get political, but you see people who would have been lumped with the Black and brown all of a
Exactly.
sudden becoming not Black or brown. And
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
that is a great shame. And but it's also filters in. So with what we're talking about today. So
exactly.
my next question to you is, how do you feel about the fact that there is no LGBT center in Bergen County? And do you see a need in your world and your existence for such a county, for such a center?
I was shocked and surprised that there wasn't one. Again, I've just been here a little over a year, so I haven't made all those connections. I guess I anecdotally asked somebody in the congregation, "Oh, is there one? Is there um, a, um, a local LGBT group in town?" And yes, maybe, no, and didn't really think about it. Having it brought to my attention again, I think it's a shame and it's a disgrace. And if we call ourselves an enlightened community, a community that, oh, we're not like those folk in Texas, that we most definitely need one. There is indeed a need. And just because someone doesn't see a problem doesn't mean there isn't one. Um, uh, and I suspect that if we had and we start a resource center, that people will come out of the woodwork, that people will be everywhere. Oh, I didn't know this resource was here. Oh, I'm so glad that there's something here. I don't have to go to New York City or Essex County or Hudson County. It is vitally important. It is vitally important until the day when we don't need centers of any kind anymore, because that society now is truly open and welcoming. But until that day, um, the LGBTQIA plus community needs a welcoming place, a resource place, a place where they can find information, and again, where they are safe, where they are safe. Um,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'm just once again just like in awe.
Oh,
Just
it
thank
is such a
you.
pleasure to meet you. It is such a
Likewise.
pleasure.
And I try to at the end of every interview, highlight the fact that you're so important, whether, and what is important about you uniquely. And the fact that you're doing this work, the fact that you come with radical welcoming, and for people that don't understand that, look it up. you
Right,
know,
exactly, exactly. We spell it out on our website. It is spelled out,
yeah,
just in case people aren't sure. We spell, this means you. This
yeah,
means you, and the inherent training that needs to be part of a congregation that is welcoming. They've already done it here. In my previous congregation, we had to do that work and did it welcoming well. And but one Sunday, one of the older women of the congregation was watching a person come into the congregation, a male who was dressed in women's clothing and carrying a pocketbook. And she said, I have to talk to him. And we're all, no, didn't you do the training? Didn't you do the, no, no. And before any of us can say anything, she says, where did you get that pocketbook? I love that bag. So 85 years old, God bless her. But she understood that that person needed to be welcome there. And when she called out to him, of course he stiffened because, isn't this a welcoming place? Am I not safe here? And all she wanted to know was, can I get a bag like yours? So that's the way the world needs to look. That's
yes,
the way we need to. And yes, it's hard work. And yes, I've told people I don't think I've told people that no, this isn't the place for you. We are out and open, and I told one person, you will see same gender people kissing in the aisle for the peace. If you have a problem with that, this isn't your congregation. You're going to see that. So you need to go to the Lutheran church down the block because that's what. So we spell it out. We spell it out.
thank
But
you. That's
with that, to remind people, everyone is welcome to come as you are. Well, almost as you are.
and that's beautiful. And I'm not saying it because LGBT and you're accepting LGBT, but that's beautiful because it's beautiful that you're looking at everyone and you're seeing, we are actively welcoming you. We're
Yes.
accepting you. We're opening you into our hearts. That's
Yes.
beautiful and that's amazing. And thank you for that. And
Thank you. Thank you.
no, thank you for being, you know, um, being visible and being, with all those struggles that you as a person have to bear, and you turn it out to do such good to so many people. Because I've heard about you
Oh,
a lot, you
oh
know,
my God.
and it's like, so you are touching a lot of people and changing a lot of lives and doing a lot of good. So
Oh
Thank
my
you
goodness, I
for
hope
that.
so.
You
Thank
know,
you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. That means so much. That means a lot to me.
yeah.
Thank you.
Um, so I have, you can, I'll talk to you forever, but we're getting towards the end of our interview. I want to give you space if you have any questions or if you want to add to the conversation, or if not, that's fine.
I want to salute the work you're doing. I'm honored to be any small part of this work that I see as so vitally important because this is life-saving work. I commend you for this. This is hard, and it's always hard when you're breaking ground. But there are a whole lot of people behind you and your effort. And I always say I'm old, so I'm going to speak. And someone doesn't like it, you know what? I'm very sorry for you. But my understanding of life, my understanding of faith, my understanding of how I live my faith in the world is that the call to everyone is irrevocable. The call to dignity for everyone is needs to be a given. And I will spend my life doing this work, being an advocate for everyone, a voice for those who don't have a voice. I will speak. And so thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. And so I just want to make sure this is being recorded,
Yes.
and this will be at a later date be placed on a web page, be viewed by everyone, and you will have access to that web page before it's made
Wonderful.
public to
Wonderful.
be transparent. Do you give consent to this?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. That's wonderful.
And do you feel okay with what we talked about? Do you feel comfortable, and do you feel that this is
Yes,
okay?
absolutely. What I've
And,
said to you, I will say to anyone.
and I can tell I love you already. I just, you meet kindred spirits. I just like, I love you. Just
I
like,
love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
um, and and like I said, at any given time, for any reason or no reason, you need this to be taken off.
Yeah.
Just let me know within reasonable amount of time. I'll do so.
Okay. Not a problem. Not a problem. It was such an honor. Such an
Like,
honor.
thank you. And so I'm gonna end the recording now. So I'm gonna say goodbye.